Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. We'll wait just a minute here, make sure everything's good to go. We're watching a bit of a dump in Bitcoin, but really it's anticipated.
Here, make sure everything's good
just
to
in
go.
the sense, obviously this is news related, we'll go over that in just a moment.
Bit of a dump in Bitcoin,
anticipated in the sense that this daily chart needs
really
further consolidation.
Anticipated,
Now we have a
make
4-hour
sure
lower
everything's
high, lower
good
low.
just in sense, obviously
And there are
this
no
is
red
news
flags on
related,
this daily chart at this
bit of a
point.
dump in Bitcoin,
We're still looking for a higher low
really
compared to 7,200.
Now we have a 4-hour lower high,
And we're keeping an eye out for the potential no red flag bounce. Not likely that this dump is done just yet.
We're still looking for a higher low.
15-minute RSI is what I'm keeping an eye on. We're down into the teens there. I do have some buys ladder for an entry in Bitcoin, but I have not filled yet. I missed my first buy by less than $2. My first buy was $79.51, and now that we saw this little bounce, I pulled that buy because I don't want to get filled at that spot anymore. I only wanted to get filled at that spot if we were on a straight shot down. This is a little example of the bears taking a breather, and now we're looking to test that low again. So I pulled that order, I dropped my bids lower, and I've got them all spaced out for the next $200, starting in the low 7,900. So as we know, with news-related reactions, RSI levels can get more extreme. That's definitely worth noting. We could see the 15-minute RSI drop down to 12. So have to keep that in mind. So this reaction is the headline reaction to the Winklevoss. First time I've ever said that. Read it 100 million times. But their ETF being rejected. Some people are saying that this is old news. I do believe that they did reapply. Either way, it doesn't matter. So why we're seeing this reaction, number one, people see ETF rejected and they automatically assume it's the ETF that we're talking about over the past couple of weeks, and that's not the case. And number two, this rejection potentially increases the odds that the ETF we're waiting on gets rejected. So those are the two scenarios as to why we're dumping right now, in my opinion. So the reasoning that they gave was potential manipulation of markets, something like 95% of volume being overseas. And again, I am positioning myself trading this cryptocurrency space, assuming that this ETF that everybody is waiting on is going to get rejected. That's currently my mindset and how I'm going to be positioning myself. That doesn't mean that if we get the approval, I'm not going to instantly all-in market buy, because I will. But I'm assuming that we're not going to get it to pass to be protected. And it's very easy to do that and just all-in market buy if we do get approved. So I've always been having that standpoint that it's not likely to pass. And again, we're not going to get disappointed if that's our standpoint. So that's where I am viewing this ETF at this point. So here we drop down on BTC. We're heading down towards 7,900. In order to find the next support, we have to scale or zoom out to the hourly time frame, and we can see that we're entering an area on the way up that doesn't have a lot of support in this zone. So we're looking at psychological levels. 7,900, 7,809 was a previous resistance. We'll look for that to act as support, but we're in an area with no support right now, which is why things are getting extreme. So 15-minute RSI right now down to 17. And I believe my first buy is going to fill. I've got maybe 5 different buys spread out with maybe $30 in between each. And I'm just going to be looking to flip an oversold bounce for small profits. So we'll look at the longer term time frames on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, EOS, BCH. See how long that takes. Wanted to talk about a couple things today. CME futures end today. There's some expiration today. And also want to talk about recently an event that happened where CME futures contracts were exchanged for physical Bitcoin. And it's called ETP, and that's exchange to physical. So that's something that happens all the time in mature markets, whether it's wheat or gold or whatever, where these contracts, that's what a futures, it's a futures contract giving people the right to buy something at a certain price at a future point in time. And the fact that that's the first time that's ever happened with Bitcoin is significant. That adds legitimacy to the space. So that is a good event. That's a positive on the sector. And that's the kind of news that, that comes out and the general herd is not going to really react really bullish to it, because on the surface it's not flashy and it doesn't have a whole lot of, this is great news. But those people that are familiar with futures trading and the broader, macroeconomic scale of the trading environment out there, that is bullish news. So again, it's just another step forward, moving towards the ETF. I am convinced there will be an ETF for Bitcoin. It's just whether it's now or in a year or in 3 years. Who knows? So RSI down at 15, 5-minute RSI, not too oversold. This can definitely keep going down. And I'm not getting too aggressive with my buying. The orders that I have placed would probably be about half of my capital. And to fill all of the orders that I placed, we would have to see about another $100 down, which I do not anticipate. But again, every time we see a little bit of a bounce, I am going to use that to potentially move bids, because that allows for further downside. As we know, that can cool off RSI and then see further downside. A little bit of a bounce right now. The last lower high is 8,020 resistance, and we're going to need a 5-minute higher low and higher high to put a stop to this bleeding. So let's look at the longer term time frames on all of these names, the daily chart, and then I'll read. I'm not reading any of the YouTube comments right now, so you are all talking amongst yourself. I'm sure some people are saying dumb things and some people are saying really insightful things, but I'll look at that in just a bit. So for Bitcoin, we have healthy daily consolidation. Pulling back right now, we're looking for a daily higher low compared to 7,200. We have declining bear volume. This was very low volume today. Actually, no, I take that back. The stage just rolled over. So we're going to see some pretty solid volume today because it started off with a bang right when that candlestick rolled over. So an inside bar bear break, we're going to be looking down towards this exponential support. So we can easily pull back down towards 7,000. I think in a previous video I said 7,700 would be an ideal level for the bulls to hold. That would still show a lot of strength. Just moving up that line visually, that would put us right about here. So keeping an eye on that level, that would be, we're still extremely strong on the daily. What this does is it gives us a 4-hour lower high, lower low. So at the end of yesterday's video, we had a 15-minute equilibrium forming, and I said, if the equilibrium breaks bullish, our 4-hour higher low is set, and we're going to look for a 4-hour equilibrium. If the equilibrium breaks bearish, we haven't formed it yet. It broke bullish. We saw some follow through today, very slow day anticipated with that daily inside bar, and then we dropped down to the lower low on this news with the bear volume spike associated with it. So we'll be watching to see if this 4-hour exponential moving average crosses bearish. Again, I'm comparing everything that we're looking at back towards April. And April, we did have a couple bear crosses, actually just one bear cross and then the real bear cross. So that's worth noting as well. Again, we hit my visual target for the weekly lower high to be set, so that shifted for me to be more protective. And a lot of people, it's hard to, some people watch my videos and interpret what I say to fit their own agenda, where, you know, in yesterday's video I said, okay, my visual target on the weekly has been hit, and we're going to be looking at, I'm going to be more cautious. So for me personally, that doesn't mean we can be the top could be in. We can absolutely keep running, but people send me messages saying, why are you calling for the top now? And that's not what I said at all. I just said my target was hit. I'm going to be protective from here. So now my call for the top will be in once the daily chart gives us a lower high and lower low. So we're going to be looking at a lower high and a lower low, indicating that our top is in and the weekly lower high has been set. And if you guys, next person to call me is going to get the boot from the chat room. Let's see who does it. So, oversold bounce attempt. We'll be keeping an eye. I'll check back in on that. But other than that, let's now check in on our other names. ETH. All right, he's getting delayed. He's getting a boot for a day. I don't care if he's a moderator. 24-hour timeout. ETH has multiple tops. I think I had my, okay. It all makes sense now. I appreciate the flashy heads ups. I had my desktop audio on and I assume it was just some crazy echo. So I'll start all over again. I don't know if anything of what I just said can be heard. So, I personally have my 5-minute buy orders scaled in down now, and I just filled a couple of them. So I started scaling in my orders 7,921, 7,901, 7,881. So I'm spacing my orders out with $20, $30 or so in between them, and I'm not using a significant amount of capital because, again, RSI levels can get more extreme on the way to the downside. So we don't want to only be using the RSI. We have to be extra cautious because this is a news-driven event. And that's a scenario where the RSI levels can get extreme. So I'm going to be extra careful on this move. But again, when the 15-minute RSI gets down close to single digits, I want to be a buyer just for a quick flip. So that's where I stand right now, and I might have to pause here and do some selling depending on how significant this bounce gets. But we need the 5-minute trend change. We need a higher low and a higher high to put a stop to the bleeding for now. So I was talking for a while, and I assume you guys didn't hear any of it. And I thought our moderators were giving me calls just to be jerks, but I appreciate that heads up. So we're talking about futures, and I was talking about futures. I'll go back to futures in just a second, but the ETF. So the ETF is denied. The reason we're dumping like this is because this is not the ETF we're all watching for. This is the Winklevoss Twins ETF. And the reason that we're dumping is, number one, people read the headline and assume it's the ETF everybody's waiting on. And number two, the reasoning that we get for this being rejected adds to the percent chances that we're going to get rejected in a few weeks from now, or when they kick the can down the road after the delay. So the reasoning they just gave was the Bitcoin market's open to manipulation. That's still something that has not been addressed at this point. And that's going to be the reason that the SEC gives to reject the ETF. So we have to keep in mind, I don't think the ETF is likely to pass this time around. I think it will pass inevitably eventually, whether it's in 1 year or 3 years. That will be, something that I think is a guarantee. But in this instance, if we position ourselves to anticipate a rejection of this ETF and then just be ready to all-in market buy if it gets approved, we're going to stay very protective. And if it gets rejected, the bears are going to all-in market sell, and they're going to knock the price down real quick, just like we're seeing right now. This is a test run. And I do believe that this bounce could get some follow through when people realize this is not as big a deal as the headline. Again, headline risk. They call it headline risk because people read the headlines and they act on it. And we had people in the chat room doing the same thing, and they went bearish as soon as they saw the headline. Obviously, it worked out as a nice play, but those are instances where people act without getting all the details. So I promise you, a lot of people sold and a lot of shorts jumped in thinking this is the ETF that we are waiting on, and that's not the case. So here's a decent bounce following through. Let's see if we can get a 5-minute higher low and a higher high and a little bit of a turnaround. Another thing I was talking about that I assume you couldn't hear with amazing echo is the futures. So we had futures, the CME futures, they had an ETP. And what an ETP is an exchange to physical. And that happens in mature markets all the time, whether it's wheat or gold or markets exchanging contracts for physical things. So a futures contract is an option to purchase something at a given price at a future date. So they had the first ETP for Bitcoin recently where actual Bitcoin were given to people exercising their futures contracts, and that adds legitimacy to the space. And that kind of headline is not going to get, it's not a fancy flashy headline, so it's not going to get the herd's attention. But for those people in the financial world, that's a pretty big deal. And we're going to be watching to see, if that just adds continued legitimacy, which I think it does. And again, that's another reason I do believe ETF and legitimacy and regulation and all that, it's all coming down the road. It's just a question of when. Whether it's a year, 3 years, who knows, but it's coming. So, going to continue watching this Bitcoin bounce. The daily consolidation right now on Bitcoin is extremely healthy still. We're going to have a very high volume day today. This candlestick just rolled over. We have a higher low at 7,200 we're going to be looking to hold, and we're still extremely healthy. I said previously that anything over 7,700, just visually, that's a target I'd like to see the bulls hold because that keeps them in full control, and we're still a good bit above that level. So there's nothing to be concerned of on the daily chart as a bull at this point. And now I'm forgetting which things that I said when you couldn't hear me and which things I said now that you could hear me. But the bottom line is my visual target on the weekly time frame was hit. When we see a lower high and a lower low on the daily time frame, that's when we're confident our weekly high or lower high has been set, and we're going to pull back and establish a higher low on the weekly once that does happen. And from there, again, I'm just comparing the move to the April move. What were the signals that the top was in there? It was a loss of the higher lows. We had the cross of the exponential moving averages back bearish. So there are plenty of things to compare, whether it's the 4-hour time frame or the daily chart, with what was going on in April. And again, I do believe that this could be the weekly lower high. So again, being conservative, not wanting to give back any of the profit that I've had over the last 2 weeks, really solid bull profit, I'm not going to give that back. So I'm remaining protective. If the bulls pull a V-shaped recovery and head to higher highs, that's great. I'll get some of that move, absolutely. and I'll be fine, protecting the profit that I've made over the last 2 weeks. So I am currently all cash aside from the orders that have filled on this 5-minute dump, and I'm going to be holding out now. This is a significant enough bounce on the 5-minute time frame that I'm going to be holding out to see if we can pull off a 5-minute higher low and higher high. From there, I will zoom out to the 15-minute time frame and watch the exponential resistance, because the exponential resistance is going to be the first real test. And if we pull off that 5-minute higher low and higher high, that exponential resistance will be catching up real quickly. So the hourly time frame, there's our big dump. The 4-hour time frame, watching for a cross of these exponential moving averages, bearish, which isn't going to happen soon. It could happen, overnight if we stay weak and don't see much bounce here. But that will be something worth watching as well, because again, back when April happened, hope I'm not repeating myself because this might be the third time I'm saying this, but we did have one little bear cross before the real cross. So there was a little bit of a fake out, but it's definitely a red flag if these exponential moving averages, the 12 and the 26 period, if those cross on the 4-hour time frame, that's going to be another potential indication that our weekly lower high has been set. Ethereum was doing a great job of gaining some ground on Bitcoin. And let's look at the ETH BTC chart just as a reference before we get into the individual details of Ethereum. So the little bounce, the daily inside bar broke bullish, the 4-hour time frame. We're trying for higher lows and higher highs. And again, it's not an impressive bounce. It's a bounce, absolutely. This is the kind of scenario where we're seeing, maybe Bitcoin is pulling back harder than ETH is. So the ETH BTC chart is going to go up in that scenario. But ETH had such a very clear resistance level. When you have resistance levels this clear, again, I'm not shorting the cryptocurrency space right now as I'm trading on Coinbase Pro, but I think of everything from both sides. I think of this chart, what would I be looking at if I'm a bull? What am I looking at if I'm a bear? And when I see tops like this, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rejections on the 4-hour time frame. That makes me extremely confident as a bear, in the sense that I will stop out if that resistance level breaks, but as long as that resistance level holds, I'm comfortable being short. So the bulls have not given the bears of ETH any reason to cover if this level does not break. So again, you have to think, if I were in a bearish trade, would I be comfortable right now, or would I be looking to exit? And we just broke a support level. This is the 4-hour range that I made in the video yesterday and said we're going to watch this range overnight. We rejected from resistance and we came down and just broke support. It's not a significant break of support, but got something in my eye. It's not a significant break of support, but it's definitely notable. And until the bulls can break this 844 resistance with 5 tops, the bulls are not going anywhere. So the daily chart is continuing to tighten, where we have our high of the initial breakout, low of consolidation, lower high, and the bulls are going to look to try and hold support down at 445 and 441. So there's not a whole lot the bulls are excited about on Ethereum. You look at the weekly time frame, again, this bounce is very, very weak. There is no confidence in this bounce right now for the bulls. So I still have no interest in any of these other names. Again, we're getting a little bit of a taste of what could happen when the ETF gets a rejection, if it gets a rejection. And here we are seeing Bitcoin dumping, and look at the names correlating. Maybe they're not correlating tick for tick with the Bitcoin dump, but they are pulling back. So we have to make note of this. This is maybe a little test run on what we're going to expect if the ETF does get rejected down the road. So ETH from here trying an oversold bounce as well. 5-minute time frame, we need that higher low, higher high, and we don't have it just yet. Litecoin, a more bearish break on the 4-hour time frame. So same thing, I drew the range yesterday in the video and said this is the range we're watching overnight. We formed a lower high, and then we just broke support. So you can see the break of Litecoin support is much more significant than the break of Ethereum support at this point. So that just shows me Litecoin is weakest and Ethereum holding up a little bit better than Litecoin at this point. So Litecoin on the daily time frame, again, just a tightening range where we have our high of the bounce, low of consolidation, lower high, and we're heading down towards support of 81 and 79.77. So clear tightening pattern on the daily chart. And when I see a daily chart like this, I sit on my hands and patiently wait and say, all right, I'll wait till the tightening range breaks. If we break the lower highs, it's a clear bull break. And if we break the higher low, it's a clear bear break. So not a ton of trading opportunity. There's definitely some day trading opportunity while we're within this range. But if I want to keep, one thing as a trader, if you're someone who's very disciplined and you can just hold off and make 1 trade or 2 trades a week or every couple of weeks and just wait until an extremely clear setup, your win percentage and your profit is going to be really good. And the reason a lot of traders can't do that is, again, it's the gambler's mindset, and it's that addictive. Without a doubt, we're releasing dopamine and chemicals in our brain that are positive, feedback loops, because we like making money and we like clicking buttons and we like gambling. And that's what keeps a lot of traders in trouble and keeps them from consistency, because they're over trading. They're trading setups that aren't their most favorable. So if I just made a blanket statement and said, the only thing that I am ever going to trade is daily equilibriums breaking, I would have a really high win percentage. It would not be 100%, but it would be extremely high. But again, it's because people try and overtrade and want to be doing something and feel like they need to be in a position and not all cash. People say cash is a position. It's absolutely true. And this is the kind of setup on the daily chart where I would just wait. And there's plenty of stocks. I have 3 stocks off the top of my head that I could show you daily or weekly equilibriums that I am just waiting on. And I've been waiting on for weeks at this point. So let's move on to EOS USD. EOS USD on the daily time frame also has a tightening range. So everything that I just said can apply here as well if you want to be patient. We have our high of the bounce, which is still a resistance level that is clearly rejecting the price in the 930s. Our higher low, lower high. So high, low, lower high, and we're looking for a higher low compared to 758. So same thing, tightening range. The 4-hour time frame just broke bearish on that dump. So you can see it's not like alts are pumping on this Bitcoin dump. It's not like cash is, flooding the altcoin market when Bitcoin is pulling back here. So very clear weak bounce attempts, 5-minute exponential resistance. We'll be looking at the 15-minute exponential if any kind of bounce follows through. We're still oversold in this scenario. Back to Bitcoin, just checking the 5-minute time frame. So we have our top of the bounce, and the bulls need to see a break of $8,011 to get some continuation here. And again, if we get that, we zoom out to the 15-minute, exponential resistance dropping down. It's about to drop down when this candlestick changes over, and that will be in play at some point within the next hour or so if this 5-minute bounce does get any follow through. And the increasing bull volume is a decent sign here. So we'll see if we can hold this low of 7,955 and get that bull break. So back to EOS, the 4-hour time frame, lower highs and lower lows now. We have clear resistance levels to be watching, and the most important resistance level on any individual name is the high right before the dump. So that is now the level to be watching for today and tomorrow and however long it takes, where any individual name that saw a bearish reaction here, that level of resistance, anything under it is just a lower high. So in order for the bulls to prove anything in terms of recovery, we're going to have to break the level of resistance from right before the dump. And I don't anticipate that to happen tonight. ETH BTC we looked at. We're going to go to BCH USD here. So same thing, BCH USD daily chart is in an equilibrium, patiently waiting for a break if you want the odds significantly in your favor and the risk to reward to be pretty darn favorable. High, low, lower high. We're looking for a higher low compared to 742, but the bulls ideally want to hold 773, which is a support level as well. On the 4-hour time frame, clear lower high and lower low bear break. Oversold conditions right now, 15-minute RSI getting extreme. They're down at 10. They're almost at single digits. So again, BCH time and time again, it's essentially like a leveraged version of Bitcoin, meaning that when we break bullish, oftentimes we see significant more gains in BCH, and when we dump, we see more extreme dump levels on BCH. So this RSI is way more beat up. The hourly RSI is already oversold. The 5-minute bounce attempt, still just lower highs. So until we see that 5-minute higher low and higher high, we don't have a whole lot of confidence in any bounce follow through. I don't know what is going on with TradingView. This is new today, but I don't know if that's a bug or what, but it keeps popping up no matter what I do. Any tips appreciated on that? So still no sign of the bounce. So again, be very cautious. RSI levels can get down to extremes. At this point, if I had filled, which I did, but if I had filled down in the low 7,900s and I had an average down there, I'd just go break even stop and have absolutely nothing to worry about. And I did a break-even stop on Facebook today in a trade that I made, and I'm still in that trade because I never triggered. And I can't tell you how comfortable it is knowing worst case scenario, you're going to have nothing change compared to before you got into the trade. So I'm going to start reading some YouTube comments. Let me switch screens, get some screens ready to go. This is what my stock layout looks like for all you people that are not used to my live streams every day. There's YouTube. I went live on the fly today, which is why things are a bit messy on my end. Look at that. Lost in space. All right. On to YouTube. Element picker mode. I'll try it out. Thank you. All right, so Bitcoin, tight grind here, and you can zoom into shorter term time frames. The 2-minute time frame. I've been using the 2-minute time frame a lot more in stocks lately for just quick scalps. I haven't used it a lot in crypto, but you can see the clear support here, 79.55. If I wanted to be very protective, I'd put a stop below that level, and the bulls have to break 8,011. BNB real bounce. Let's check it. Very solid BNB bounce. So daily chart on BNB is still lower highs. Have to see the daily trend break. But as far as the bounce short term here, that's a real bounce. And the volume is screaming at us. Cannot be more clear. Real bounce. So volume is my prove it indicator. And that's proving it. So very likely to set a higher low and higher high. Very significant gains there. You can see the 15-minute candlestick of all bull volume is completely engulfing the bear volume scenario. So this is a pretty good daily chart to be watching. Again, everything that I just said applies. If you want to wait for the trend to change on the daily time frame to have the trend at your back and in your favor, that is a perfectly fine strategy. We have a double bottom on the weekly, 1161 and 1163. So the weekly higher lows have held. And if we can break this daily lower high pattern on BNB and shift this trend, we're going to look for some solid follow through. So if we pull back from here, we'll look for a higher low somewhere in the 1260s or so, very roughly, just visually looking at that. And then the bulls need to break the lower highs for some follow through. Definitely want to keep an eye on BNB because the levels are so clear. Double bottom on the weekly, very clear daily lower highs to be looking at. And as far as the 4-hour time frame goes, we still have an uptrend. So everything that we just looked at has lower highs on the 4-hour, lower highs and lower lows, and that's not the case for BNB. So very clear lead bull. Thanks for pointing that out. Oh boy, record downvotes for my Echo fiasco first thing. I guess I deserve it. Definitely a possibility that BTC has moved to some BNB, but really everybody in the crypto space wants to see BNB thrive, in my opinion, just in the sense that having a solid uptrend and remaining in an uptrend is good. I mean, honestly, as a cryptocurrency bull, I make my money when the prices in cryptocurrency go up, just the way that I'm playing this market right now. And I want to see anything thrive. I want to see any altcoin run 500%. I don't care if I don't make $1 on it, but that kind of sentiment trickles over to the entire cryptocurrency space. And profits trickle over in the entire cryptocurrency space. So you remember back in 2017 when we were in raging bull mode, we would see, one coin would run, and then we'd see profit taking, and then another coin would run. And that's just groups moving funds around from coin to coin. So I would love to see any coin go bananas and give a ton of bulls a ton of money, because that increases sentiment and it increases the odds that that money is going to stay in the cryptocurrency space. BTC contracts are expiring tomorrow. Those CMEs, again, talked about how the CMEs were ETP, exchanged to physical, which is funny because Bitcoin is not physical, but that's what it's called. And again, it's the headline risk. And we've seen this twice now. The other headline right off the top of my head, don't have it, but there was one recently where it was, you have to read past the headline. And it was regarding the ETF as well. So this news, ETF, both bullish and bearish, is going to be used to try and sway the market in certain directions. And this is the kind of scenario where, 4-hour time frame was holding up real well for these bulls. We're going to get a Bitcoin break of this 2-minute range within the next 6 minutes or so. But it was the 4-hour time frame. I was surprised the bulls were still holding on at this point. And then a little bit of FUD news, knock it down. This is the consolidation I anticipated to happen, but it took news and high bear volume to make it follow through. Let's check out what the shorts are doing. Bitcoin shorts. So they're closing down. Shorts are still decreasing at this point. And we're close to the shorts being the lowest point If we see shorts go under 18,300, we're going to see the lowest amount of shorts since March. That will be pretty notable. And again, we're certainly not in any kind of scenario where shorts get squeezed. So imagining the psychology behind short squeezes and what are scenarios where short squeezes could happen, it takes, again, that mindset of shifting bullish to bearish. If I were a bear, am I comfortable in this scenario? And that's what we've seen twice on the daily chart for Bitcoin with these tight ranges. The first one in April, equilibrium pattern, high number of shorts. As soon as we break the lower highs, I am not comfortable as a bear. I want out of that position because the daily trend changed. Same thing at 6,800 just recently. Break that multiple top level. Bears are comfortable as long as that is resistance. As soon as that breaks, the trend changes and the bears have to start to cover. So I imagine if I were a bear, where would I be covering? What kind of breaks? And those are the two levels. And of course, we see it in a big way in the reaction that the market has once those levels break. Mod saved the day. I was about to talk for an hour with massive echo and nobody hearing me. And I thought after the third time with 2 different mods from our chat rooms calling me, something better be up. So checking back in on Bitcoin again, I'm in a position, so I'm watching to see how this little break occurs, and we're getting close. $8,011. And I will be much more comfortable on this bounce, probably let it ride out a little bit longer. And I am profitable at this point. I'm going to have to check back in on my orders and see which one's filled, but judging on where I started placing my bids, definitely profitable at this point. So nice little follow through. Need a little bit more convincing break. A dollar's not going to do it. I'll always consider anything under $10 a potential double top, but there's our clear break. So now we've got a little continuation. We zoom out to the 15-minute time frame and we watch these exponential resistances, because for this bounce to get further follow through, we are going to set a 15-minute lower high. There is no doubt about that. It's just a question of at what point is that 15-minute lower high going to form. From there, we're going to form a lower high. We're going to pull back and form a higher low and very likely form an equilibrium. And I can say that at this point. Before that break occurred, I would not say that we're likely to see an equilibrium. Now that that break just occurred, the bounce from the low of 78.69 up to where we stand right now, almost $200, $160 at this point, that's significant enough that we can anticipate a higher low will form once we do top out. Nice little push forward. So solid bounce. And again, if you catch something like this headline and you have a pulse on the market and you know that the market is reacting to this headline and not reading the article and not seeing that it is the Winklevoss ETF and not the one that everybody's looking for, that's a scenario where I would be a little bit more inclined to buy that dip, because once the news sinks in and once people rationalize it and talk in their groups and their Facebook groups and their trading groups and they realize, oh, wait, this isn't what we're looking for, that's when we get the bounce with a little bit more follow through. Another thing to talk about is my reason for getting in this trade, scaling in, was RSI levels. The 15-minute RSI level down in the single digit or close to single digits in the teens. That was my reason for entering the trade. My reason for entering the trade is now gone. We are not oversold on the 15-minute, we're not oversold on the hourly, and we're not oversold on the 5-minute. So that's when I start to take profit, because every reason that I had for being in this trade is no longer the case. So I would take partial profit, and then I would maybe let half of my position ride, attempting a 15-minute higher low and higher high, and I would exit that half if we get a 15-minute equilibrium and then a bear break. There you go. Markets definitely shoot first and ask questions later, just in the sense of knee-jerk reactions. And again, we saw it in our chat room. People jumped in, rightfully so. As soon as they see the headline that says ETF, rejected, it doesn't matter if it's the right ETF or not, because they know the market's going to panic initially. You get in a trade, you can very quickly put a stop loss at break even and have complete protection, and then you can go back and read the details and figure out exactly what's going on. And that's what a lot of traders did do, recognizing that it would at least be an initial bearish reaction. I agree about the need for consolidation timed with the news perfectly. You'll see that very often, time and time again. XRP, and then we'll check back in on BNB. XRPUSD on Bitfinex. So again, this is another one. First thing I want to look at on every time frame, I start macro and I zoom in. So weekly, daily, 4-hour, and these weekly charts on the vast majority of names aside from Bitcoin are showing me nothing. This is all weakness. I look at this chart and say the bulls are nowhere to be found. They're attempting to defend support. They're seeing no follow through on any bounce, upper wicks of profit taking. It's not a bullish scenario on this weekly chart. The daily chart saw a solid move on the initial bounce, just like everybody did with Bitcoin, and then they just faded and faded. So we have our low, high of the move, higher low, lower high. Support is 438 and 430. Those are two support levels. The bulls have to break the double top at 47, 47068. And it's a scenario where most altcoins have to prove themselves as bulls. It's up to the bulls to prove themselves because of the overall trend, whereas Bitcoin, bulls already proved it. They broke the trend on the daily. They got significant follow through. Now we're in a scenario for Bitcoin where the bears have to prove it by pulling the price back on the daily chart, seeing a change in the daily trend back in their favor, but everybody else has a prove it scenario for the bulls still. So that's a distinct difference between all of these names. So bounce on BNB, topped out at 1337. We're going to have to perform a 5-minute higher low, and we'll see if we can get continuation after that. Whenever I'm looking on whether an equilibrium is going to happen or not, it's the size of the pullback that is the indication. So on this move, if we pull back to 1320 and that's it, and then the bulls show up, that's the size of a pullback that could lead straight to continuation. If we pull back to 1314 and pull back all the way down here, the V-shaped continuation is a lot less likely. That's when the odds of an equilibrium increase significantly. So the initial range of the top of the move and the low of the initial pullback is what I use the most to gauge whether an equilibrium is coming or not. And in the opposing scenario on a dump, from the low of the dump to the high of the initial bounce, that's what I use to gauge, is it going to be an equilibrium? Equilibrium is higher low and lower high tightening pattern. Definitely agree the chart is more important than news, but there are plenty of times that you can profit off of news. I've been trading after hours earnings on Facebook and Amazon, and it's just emotions, pure emotions. As soon as that earnings report comes out, the price goes nuts, volatility goes crazy, volume goes crazy, because it is everybody, and it's algos reacting to the earnings. But after that sinks in a little bit, it's all emotions. And so I am capitalizing on those emotions because they push prices in extreme directions. And if the price shoots up really high, I look to short it. And if it dumps down to the ground, I look to buy that dip. EOS USD daily inverse head and shoulders pattern. It's there. That's a good eye. So left shoulder, head. We already saw Bitcoin do it. Have to see a bull break of this multiple tops here. 945 and 935. Signal number one would be the break of 935, and then confirmation would be the break of 945. Very similar pattern to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has to form a 5-minute higher low compared to 79.55. That level breaking would be a bit of a red flag. I do not like an entry in ETH USD until we change the daily trend. And that's not going to happen anytime soon now that we're back in this tightening range. Step number one is a break of 484. With so many clear rejections at 484, we should see a solid little bull push through that level once it does break. But I would only be using that as a short-term trade. Again, this weekly chart on Ethereum is doing nothing for the bulls. Upper wicks of profit taking. This is a bear flag. So this is a bear flag potential for just continuation down. And the bulls need to be so cautious because we're at a point right now where if Bitcoin just formed our weekly lower high, again, we do not have enough information to say that yet, But if Bitcoin just formed our lower high and we're going to pull back and have to form a higher low, perhaps at 7,000 or 6,800 previous resistance, if that's going to happen, Ethereum is not positioned well to absorb that consolidation. And if we correlate pretty strongly to Bitcoin, while Bitcoin consolidates, Ethereum is going to drop down to its low of 400 and potentially confirm this weekly bear flag to lower lows. So that's why all these altcoins need to be extra cautious, because if we keep correlating with Bitcoin as we have been, even if it's a little bit stronger than Bitcoin, if Bitcoin consolidates on the weekly and pulls back 10 to 15%, these coins are not positioned well to absorb that consolidation. I would call Ethereum an equilibrium if we saw more of a bounce. We would have to get up to 600 to make our way back to a clear lower high. The bulls formed a higher low. They're attempting to head up and form a lower high, but because this bounce is so weak, it favors the bears significantly. Just did XRP. BNB is absolutely worth trading. It's an uptrend on the weekly chart. It's an uptrend on the 4-hour time frame. The trend is your friend. If you're trading bullish, the daily chart still has to change the trend, but if the 4-hour trend is bullish and the weekly trend is bullish, it's worth keeping an eye on BNB. And if we change this daily downtrend, the bulls are going to have all time frames in their favor and going to be back in control. The bears have been in control for BNB since the end of June, and the bulls are looking to change that. We might need a daily higher low. Just the way this is currently set up, I would expect needing a daily higher low and then a break at the lower highs if these bulls are going to follow through. I agree that this news definitely has clear timing. And again, I'm the viewpoint. I've had this viewpoint since trading stocks years ago, that news is always timed. Unless it's a news event that happens out in the real world and it's captured, live and breaking news. But decisions or, a news article being released, they're always timed. It's never just, oh, well, let's release it right now. There's a lot of thought that goes into when that should be put out. Yes, we do accept crypto for the chart guys, which I love. We had people like to say, oh, you just trade cryptocurrency. You're not a true believer. You don't do anything for this space. But we are a business that transacts and accepts cryptocurrency payments. So anybody that can start a business and use cryptocurrency, do it, because you are benefiting this space. The more transactions, the better. Email in info@thechartguys.com if you want to use cryptocurrency for anything. Coinbase is developing a more easy payment system for crypto, but not up to par yet. Already did XRP. Checking back in on this Bitcoin bounce. So we just held support by $1. New range, 79. Well, we'll keep that same support. 79.55 support, 80.44 resistance. Battle of 5-minute exponential resistances, which will lead to a battle of the exponential resistances on the 15-minute. Still not confident in these bulls just yet on this bounce. And even if we do get follow through on this bounce, the hourly chart's going to set a lower high. So we're likely in consolidation mode. I mean, we know we're in consolidation mode since yesterday, but this could continue into tomorrow pretty easily. But in terms of absorbing, the brunt of that volume and that flush, that's over. It's been absorbed. Doesn't mean we can't drop down to a lower low, but I just mean in terms of the extreme $400 dump. The news has been absorbed enough by the market. The shock factor is gone. Emotions ran wild real quick. So I think if we do drop down to lower lows, it's not going to be, a $200 drop. It's just going to be a drop to lower low without a ton of follow through behind it. So aside from this little oversold bounce for Bitcoin, again, I'm just patiently waiting to see what daily consolidation looks like. I know that the volume is going to be increased to this current daily candlestick, which is a bit of a red flag, just in the sense that consolidation, you always want to see declining bear volume. News is going to be the reason for it, but we have to make note that is not perfect consolidation if we see increased volume on this next candlestick. And I will be looking for a change in the hourly trend. Once the hourly trend from this point gives me higher lows and higher highs, then I will be a bit more confident that our daily higher low has been established. So that'll be a potential scenario where once the hourly trend changes, if you make an entry, you put your stop below the low of consolidation at that point, and it's a pretty protected trade. You're not risking a whole lot at that point. So that would be an entry where I would look to get in on the daily higher low and see a move up. And again, just like I explained, how do I interpret whether an equilibrium is coming or not? On this size of the pullback, we can see continuation on this move. If we were to pull back under 7,700, the odds of a daily equilibrium would be more likely than any kind of continuation move. So that's why I use this visual and say, okay, 7,700. If we can hold this level, continuation is possible. If we do not hold this level, equilibrium is likely the best case for the bulls. I'm probably going to wrap this up real quick. Again, I just wanted to jump on rather than recording a video and having it take a half hour to upload while this dump's going on. But I've got some positions to manage, probably going to take some partial profit and just remain protective. And might let half of it ride a little bit longer. So I appreciate you all watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Apologies for the screeching, echoing. I'm going to have to listen to what that sounded like and go back. Did want to mention, let's see, do good things. I was in line to get coffee today, and the woman did not want to be there working. And just, complete blank expression. And she wasn't rude or anything. She just had absolutely no customer service whatsoever. So there's two ways that people can react to that. They can, number one, get upset and say, I'm the customer, you're supposed to be serving me, and let me talk to the manager, or you need an attitude adjustment. That's one way to handle it. Or the other way is to recognize with empathy and say, this person is working a service industry job. She could have been here for 6 hours already. She's been standing on her feet all day. She's not doing something that inspires her, giving people their coffee. And I can understand what it would be like to maybe not want to fake smile at all the dozens and dozens or hundreds of people that I'm serving. So in that scenario, saying something, I talked about complimenting people. Hey, I like your hair. Or, hey, that's a sweet shirt. Nice tattoo, bro. Whatever it is, that one little comment can have an impact that is almost like what's the word I want to use? Not a catalyst, a chain reaction. So it can shift their mindset enough to have a positive spin on things. And maybe they're not so bummed out about being at work from that point on. So it goes two paths. If I go the negative route and tell them they're being terrible at their job, that's only going to compound more negativity. And then the next day they're going to say, oh man, I have to go back to this job and the customers are telling me I'm an idiot. Or you give the positivity and maybe they feel a little bit better about their day. And it's just an instance where I'm getting more and more of a pet peeve of mine where people feel, entitled to this great customer service and don't cut people a break. You have to imagine what it would be like to work an 8-hour shift in the service industry and to have to put that fake smile on. I just could not do it. And the people that do it to pay their bills have to give them some kind of a free pass, in my opinion. And again, it's a difference if they're being intentionally rude, but in most instances, they're not. That's that. Do good things. Thanks for all the Iceland tips. I appreciate that. Got a ton of info. Going to do big time research this weekend, plan the trip out, and I'll certainly take a bunch of video and pictures and all of that. I hope you all have a good rest of your day.